Today's lesson is Dialogue Focus, Visiting a Steakhouse. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And my name is Helen.
And as we continue with the month of January in our new year 2022, we're talking about going to a restaurant and having a nice meal. Of course, lots of people like to eat steak, and steak is a common item for people to have when they want to have a special meal. Not me. I tend to be more vegetarian, but in any case, lots of people like to visit a steakhouse.
That's right. In the past, not so anymore. In the United States, a lot of people went to steakhouses for celebrations because steak is usually more expensive than your typical meal. So if something good has happened, if someone has gotten a promotion or graduated from school, then the family might take that member to a steakhouse to celebrate, where they will get a nice grilled steak, maybe with a lobster on the side. That's turf and serve. So steakhouses are still around, not as popular as before, but there are still some very enthusiastic diehard steak eaters. So here we are talking about going to a steakhouse in this dialogue.
That's what we're talking about. So, of course, when you want to go to a special steak restaurant for a special occasion, it's probably a good idea to make a reservation first. So here in the first part of our conversation, we've got Lucy, and she wants to make a reservation at a steak restaurant. So let's find out how she does that. Let's listen to the first conversation in today's lesson, and then we'll come back to talk about it.
Visiting a steakhouse.
Making a reservation. Lucy is craving steak, so she calls a local restaurant.
Hello, this is Grill Kings. How may I help you today?
Yes, hello. I'd like to make a reservation for tonight. Do you have a table for 2 at 7:30?
Yes, we have a table available then. What name would you like to make the reservation under?
Lucy, thanks.
Great. We have your reservation in our system. I should also inform you that we are currently operating under COVID-19 restrictions.
What does that mean?
We have to organize our seating in a way that complies with social distancing regulations. And some of our dishes, such as the full rack of ribs, are designed to be shared, but customers aren't allowed to eat from the same plate. So, if you want to order one of those dishes, we'll have to portion the food before serving it.
Oh, that won't be a problem at all.
Fantastic. Then we'll see you at 7:30.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for your help.
大家好，第一部分我们看到动词 crave， 表示渴望得到或是迫切需要，像是 Pregnant people sometimes crave strange foods， 怀孕的人有时会想吃奇怪的食物，或是 Many celebrities crave press coverage,So they attract attention to themselves. 许多名人渴望获得媒体报道，所以他们会将注意力引到自己身上。再来，我们看到名词 restriction， 指限制或是规定，像是 The government plans to ease import restrictions. 政府打算放宽进口限制。也可以说 Timmy didn't meet the height restrictions, so he couldn't go on the ride. Timmy 的身高不符合规定，所以不能搭这个游乐设施。另外补充一个同义名词 limitation， L-I-M-I-T-A-T-I-O-N， limitation 指限制或是局限。例如 I try not to put limitations on what the children are allowed to read。 我尽量不对孩子阅读的内容设限。或者 Brad's greatest limitation as an actor is his lack of talent for playing serious roles。Brad 作为演员最大的局限是他缺乏饰演严肃角色的才能。接着我们看到单字 seating， 这个字是名词，指座位安排或是座位。举例来说 When going to a theater, you must sit at the assigned seating。 去看电影时，你必须坐在指定的座位上。或是 This aircraft only has a seating capacity of 2 people。 这个飞机的座位只能容纳2人。再来我们看到动词 comply， 意思是遵守或是服从，常见的用法为 comply with 加名词，像是 Robert complied with the police officer's instructions. Robert 遵从警员的指示。也可以说 Most residents complied with the new recycling rules. 大部分的居民都有遵守新的回收规定。这里补充一个同义动词 adhere, A-D-H-E-R-E, adhere, 指遵守或是忠于，用法为 adhere to 加名词。我们可以说 Participants must adhere to the rules of the game. 参赛者必须遵守比赛规定。或是Be sure you adhere to all safety protocols when working in the lab. 在实验室里工作时，务必遵守所有的安全规定。
So part 1 is titled Making a Reservation. So when you want a hotel to hold a room for you or a restaurant to keep a table for you, then you can make a reservation in advance by calling them or going on their website and saying, I'd like to reserve a room or a table. And then when you arrive, you might say, I have a reservation for 2 under the name so-and-so. So that's making a reservation. And here, Lucy is going to make a reservation at a steakhouse because she is craving steak and she calls a local steak restaurant.
Yeah, when you're craving something, you'd really like to eat that thing. Sometimes this happens if you have not had a certain kind of food for a long time and you think about it and you go, oh, I'd really like to have a taco right now. I haven't had a good taco in many years. A couple of weeks ago, I had a craving for Orange Crush, of all things. That's kind of an orange soda from the United States. But in this particular case, Lucy is craving steak. So in order to satisfy her craving, she calls a local restaurant. And the person answering the phone says, Hello, this is Grill Kings. How may I help you today? So, of course, you need to be polite when you answer the phone. And you need to identify yourself first. Hello, this is Grill Kings. How may I help you today? What can I do for you today? Etc. And the name of this particular steakhouse is called Grill Kings. And what does Lucy say?
And Lucy says, Yes, hello. I'd like to make a reservation for tonight. Do you have a table for 2 at 7:30? So Lucy responds with the information that's necessary to make a reservation. She tells the restaurant manager that there will be the 2 of them and that she would like to arrive at 7:30. 7:30 is another way of saying 7:30. So you could also say, for instance, 15 past 7 to mean 7:15.
Right, so 7:15 or a quarter after 7. And of course, if it's 6:45, you could say a quarter to 7. My cousin who lived in Philadelphia said a quarter of 7. But where I'm from in the Midwest, we say a quarter to 7. And in any case here, 7:30 just means 7:30, 7:30. So that's when she'd like to make the reservation for. And the restaurant manager says, Yes, we have a table available then. We do have a table that you can have at that time. What name would you like to make the reservation under? So, yeah, when you make a reservation, your name will be under a certain name. So what's the reservation under? What's the name for the reservation? Is it Johnson? Is it Smith? Is it Wilson or whatever?
Right, so you make a reservation under a specific name for a specific number of people at a specific time. And Lucy says, Lucy, thanks. She gives the restaurant manager her name, and the restaurant manager replies, Great, we have your reservation in our system. So he entered that information into a computer so that it's in the system. I should also inform you that we are currently operating under COVID-19 restrictions.
Right, and we all know about these restrictions, of course. Various restaurants and businesses have those restrictions. Of course, some of those come down from the government. The most common restriction would be that you can't sit together at the same table. Maybe only one person can sit at a table for 2. And then there are other kinds of restrictions as well. Limits, you could also say restrictions or limits. Things you have to do in order to fight the spread of that horrible virus. And Lucy may not understand these restrictions, so she says, What does that mean? What does that mean for me? What does that have to do with me?
And the manager says, we have to organize our seating in a way that complies with social distancing regulations. So, in other words, they have to reorganize or organize their seating. Seating refers to the seats in a public space. So, you have seating in a restaurant, seating in a theater, just places where people, guests, customers would sit. So they have to organize those seats, those chairs and tables in a way that complies with social distancing regulations. Comply means to obey a rule or a law. So to comply with social distancing regulations means to obey those regulations that are related to social distancing. A regulation is an official rule that controls how something is done.
Right, so of course social distancing has to do with how far away you can be from another person. So of course in restaurants and in convenience stores here in Taiwan, when you're waiting in line, they'll have a piece of tape on the floor so that you have to stand a certain distance from the person in front of you and from the person behind you. So that's all about social distancing so that the virus doesn't have a chance to get to you and invade your body and give you the disease. So, of course, these are social distancing regulations, which are rules, again, as Helen said, about how to practice social distancing. And some of our dishes, such as the full rack of ribs, are designed to be shared, but customers aren't allowed to eat from the same plate. So, indeed, this is a featured dish that this restaurant has, a rack of ribs. I guess that's a bunch of ribs all on the same plate.
Yes, and since there are a lot of ribs in this dish, it's usually ordered by more than one person or to be shared by multiple people. And under normal circumstances, perhaps they could just place this dish in the middle of the table and then people can take what they want. But since there are social distancing regulations and they need to sit farther away from each other, then they're not going to be able to share that dish as they would normally. So this particular dish, the full rack of ribs, are designed to be shared, but customers aren't allowed to eat from the same plate. So if you want to order one of those dishes, we'll have to portion the food before serving it. In other words, we're going to have to divide that food into individual portions to portion it, put the food on individual plates before we serve the food to you.
So here, portion is actually being used as a verb. It's most often used as a noun, right?
Yes, so portion is a part of something, usually quite equally divided part of a certain thing, a portion of food, a portion of the work to be distributed evenly amongst workers. But here, portion is used as a verb. It just means the act of dividing into portions.
Right, and portion is, of course, as I said, most often used as a noun. You might say, oh, the food in that restaurant is no good, and the portions are so small. This might be surprising for people from Taiwan who travel to the United States and order food in a restaurant. They'll go, wow, no wonder the Americans are so fat. Their portions are so huge. Who could not get fat from eating so much food? So in this particular case, though, again, we're using the word portion as a verb. And yes, indeed, they will have to put the ribs on separate plates before it is served. Now, here's what Lucy says. Oh, that won't be a problem at all. Lucy is aware of these restrictions. She's used to it.
And the manager says, fantastic. Then we'll see you at 7:30. So he confirms the reservation and Lucy replies, wonderful. Thanks so much for your help.
Indeed. So it looks like Lucy's going to have a great time at the restaurant despite COVID restrictions, despite those social distancing regulations. It's still possible to eat out in your favorite restaurant if you have a craving for steak or whatever. Okay, that brings us to the end of our first conversation for today. Let's move on now to part 2 and listen to Lucy's conversation with the waiter, and Eric is there too.
Ordering food. Eric and Lucy arrive at the restaurant a few minutes early.
Welcome to Grill Kings. Do you have a reservation?
Yes, under Lucy.
Excellent, we have you here. Now let me just take your temperature. Great. Hold out your hands, please. Let me show you to your table. This place looks incredible. Here are your menus. I'll be back in just a moment with some water. Would you like to order, or do you need a little more time? We're ready to order. I'd like the porterhouse, thanks. And she'll have the ribeye. Very good. And how would you like those? Medium rare for both, thank you. Oh, and 2 Cokes, please. Coming right up.
最后第二部分我们看到单字 booth， 这个字是名词，指餐厅里的雅座、隔间或是小亭子。例如 One of the signature traits of American diners is the booth, which is rarely seen in Taiwan. 美式餐馆的一大特色是小隔间，在台湾几乎看不到这样的座位。或是 Please note that the voters mustn't announce their decision in the polling booth. 请注意，选民们绝对不能在投票亭公开他们的决定。
So in part 2, ordering food, Lucy and Eric have arrived at the restaurant. They have arrived a few minutes early, and the waiter greets them by saying, "Welcome to Grill Kings. Do you have a reservation?" And Lucy says, "Yes, under Lucy." In other words, the reservation is under the name Lucy.
That's right. And of course, when you make your reservation, you have to give them your name. And sometimes it's an unusual name, so you have to spell it for them. But Lucy's a pretty, straightforward name, L-U-C-Y. And the waiter says, "Excellent. We have you here. Your name is in our computer. It's in our database. It's in our system." And then, of course, because of COVID restrictions, the waiter says, "Now, let me just take your temperature." And this happens, of course, a lot of times when you go into a restaurant, they stick that thermometer up to your forehead or make you stick your hand underneath that one device there that squirts a little bit of alcohol on your hands and measures your temperature at the same time. You need to have your temperature taken. These are some things they have to do when you enter a restaurant. Take your temperature and hold out your hands.
Right. Hold out your hands because the waiter wants to spray some alcohol on their hands. And alcohol is that liquid that everybody is familiar with now that they have to spray their hands with before they enter a store or a restaurant. It's what disinfects your hands. When you spray alcohol on your hands, you're getting rid of any germs or anything that might cause disease on your hands. Alcohol is also the substance that's in a lot of drinks. Alcoholic drinks like beer, whiskey, that could make you feel drunk. It's the same type of liquid, but not exactly the same. So the waiter sprays their hands with alcohol and says, "Let me show you to your table." And he leads the couple to their booth.
Right. If you go to a restaurant, of course, you have the choice of sitting at a table or sitting in a booth. A lot of people prefer booths because they are a little more private. It feels like you have your own room, sort of. And Eric, who is with Lucy, he's accompanying Lucy. He says this place looks incredible. So he likes this restaurant. They have a wonderful decor inside there. The waiters and waitresses have very special uniforms. So Eric is impressed, and incredible basically means unbelievable. It's just so great that I can't believe this. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. It is so cool.
And the waiter says, "Here are your menus. I'll be back in just a moment with some water." And Eric and Lucy look at the menus and the waiter returns. So that's pretty typical. When you go to a restaurant, the waiter will show you to your seat, give you your menu, and then will leave so that you have some time to look over the menu and decide what you want to order. And then the waiter comes back, and that's when the waiter will ask the couple what they want to order.
Yeah, they usually leave you some drinking water at the beginning. That's not done here in Taiwan, so that might seem unusual if you eat at a restaurant in the USA. They give you some water before you actually order your meal. They may not do that in California, though, because they always seem to have droughts there. But in any case here, the waiter has given them their menus. And then the waiter returns and says, "Would you like to order, or do you need a little more time?" And Eric says, "Well, we're ready to order. We've perused the menu. We've looked it over, and we've decided what we'd like to order." So Eric begins. He says, "I'd like the porterhouse, thanks." That's a kind of steak. And then she'll have the ribeye. In some situations, it's polite for the man to order for both himself and his female companion. You see that sometimes, but most situations, everybody orders for themselves. Although, guys, it's probably polite to let the ladies order first.
Yep, and the waiter says, very good, and how would you like those? In other words, how long would you like your steaks to be cooked? This is a question that's often asked when you go to steakhouses and when you order steak because each person has their own preference for how long they want their meat cooked.
Yeah, he would also say, how would you like your steak? And, of course, that's when you tell them how you would like it cooked. So, of course, Eric says medium rare for both. She'd like hers cooked medium rare, and so would I, okay? There are different ways to cook your steak. You could have it really rare, really bloody, or you could have it well done so you don't see any pink in there at all. But that's what they'd like to order. And then for drinks, they would like to have 2 Cokes. And 2 Cokes, please.
And the waiter says, coming right up. So the waiter has taken their orders. He knows what they want and how long they want the steaks to be cooked and what they want to drink. So he says, coming right up, which means I will be right back with your order. You won't have to wait very long.
Okay, so they've ordered and their food will probably arrive very soon. So that brings us to the end of our conversation for today. Let's now listen to Henny, our beloved Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。在课文第一部分的对话里， Lucy 打电话去一家餐厅订位，餐厅经理在安排订位的时候就有提醒 Lucy， 目前他们餐厅是依照新冠肺炎的规定来营业的。好，文中他用到 restriction 这个名词来表达限制规定，那它是来自动词 restrict。 我们来学习它的字首字根。好，看到strict strict， 或者是看到 strain strain， 或者是 stress stress， 这一类的字根它有绑、束缚、拉直、拉紧等等的语义，就带有那种压力达到最极致的意思。而在 restrict 这个字当中，它的字首 re 表示 back 向后，字根 strict 表示拉紧，向后拉紧应该很容易联想到 restrict 会有限制、约束的意思。那我们顺便补充2个有这一类字根的单字。第一个补充的是 constrain constrain， 它的字首 con 表示一起，字根 strain 表示拉紧。当我们用绳子把东西绑住，那你这时候把这个绳子两端一起拉紧，用这个画面也许可以联想到说 constrain 它有束缚、限制的意思。好，我们第二个介绍的字是 distress distress。好，这个部分呢，它其实是由字首 di 再搭配 stress。 这个 di 是来自 dis 表示分离，只是因为它碰到 s 开头的字根才变形成 di。 好，那么再来我们看到字根 stress 的部分表示拉紧。好，分离跟拉紧可以怎么想象呢？同学们可以想，当你拥有的东西呢被强拉走，你是不是很想要把它紧紧的抓着，不要让它分离？或者是说2个相依的人，他手拉得紧紧却被强迫分离，2个人拉很紧却要分离，好痛苦啊！好，用这样的方式去联想到 distress 有使苦恼、使忧伤的意思，希望同学们不会觉得太牵强。再来看到第二部分的对话里面， Eric 和 Lucy 抵达餐厅了。 Eric 觉得这个地方看起来很棒，他用到 incredible 这个字。那我们也来学习它的字根。好， cred 这个字根就是指信任、相信。像我们知道 credit 这个名词它就有信誉啊、信用的意思，所以应该不难看出 cred 这部分可以表达信任、相信。好，那么字尾 ible 就跟 able 一样，可以用来表达可怎么样的、能怎么样的。那我们现在把字根跟这个字尾合在一起， credible 就表示可靠的、可信的、真实的。然后我们在前面再加上否定字首 in 变成 incredible， 那就表示难以置信的、不可思议的。这也可以用来表达是极好的、很棒的意思哦。我们顺便补充一组有相同字根的单字，就是 credulous 和 incredulous。 好，我们来看 credulous， 它是拼作 credulous， 那我们刚刚有说 CRED 是信任相信的意思，那后面加上 ULOUS 它是形容词字尾，表示倾向于怎么样，习惯于怎么样。如果你总是习惯相信别人，倾向于相信别人，可能就比较容易被骗嘛。那么 credulous 就是形容轻易相信的，容易受骗的。那么在 credulous 前面加上否定字首 in 变成 incredulous， 那就表示不轻信的，怀疑的，疑心重的。好，以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单字吧。
Reservation. James called the restaurant to make a dinner reservation. Restriction. Travel restrictions are making it difficult for Gary to visit his family. Comply. Failure to comply with this notice may lead to legal action. Regulation. These regulations are in place to ensure that your workplace is safe. Alcohol. Drinking even small amounts of alcohol can be harmful to your health. Booth. The two women sat in a booth by the window and caught up over coffee. Incredible. The singer walked onto the stage and gave an incredible performance.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoyed reading along with us. I am Roger.
I'm Helen.
See you next time.